Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett. My guest today is one of my favorite people, Mike McLendon. Mike was a part of the Second City cruise ship tours and is also an alum of Comedy Sportz, UCB, and IO. His UCB house team is Outside Dog. He's a part of How I Met Your Sitcom, and he teaches at Weegis. I love this episode partially because I just love hanging out with and talking to Mike, but also because there's so many useful tidbits in here, both for improv students and maybe more so for improv teachers. If you are not yet a subscriber of this podcast, what are you doing? We have double the content waiting for you over at yesalso.supercast.com, including part 2 of this episode. That's right, what you see here is only half of this, and in the second half, we really get into the improv weeds. If you prefer video footage, you can find that over on our YouTube channel, and while you're there, you can subscribe to us for free. But enough about how you can help us, let's help you. Listen to Mike McLendon. Mike McLendon.
Hi, Susie.
The very same. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of
This
course.
is wonderful.
Yeah, you've been on the list forever. It's wild to see. It's like the list is like hundreds of people long.
Yeah.
And it's like the process is kind of random. It's like trying to spread out like where people are from and what their backstories are and whatever. But yeah, it's.
Gosh, I'm glad my bingo card was pulled because when you said you're on the list, I was like, yeah, but how deep?
Oh, there is there's no like priority in terms of
Sure.
like who I think is better but there's nothing quantifiable. It's just like who has like kind of a different vibe or like came from a different place or
Yeah, cool.
spreading it around.
Great.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start origin story? Do you want to start like something that's been on your mind about improv lately? I know you've been teaching a lot of drop-ins and classes at
Yeah,
Weegis.
I teach a whole lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can start origin story. That's always kind of fun.
Yeah.
I always like hearing where people began and how it.
Great. I'm glad you asked. I'm from Michigan.
Okay, cool. Detroit area?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you go to school with Eugene?
Yes.
Okay,
Wow.
cool.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Great.
Yeah. So you're from Texas.
I'm a military brat. So
Oh,
I was I was
oh.
born in New Mexico, and then as my parents had more kids, they needed more income. And my dad went to work for the Department of Defense, so not an official like military branch, but he built things on bases. So I moved a lot. Like starting in first grade, we moved a whole lot up till high school, and then luckily I got to stay a little bit.
All around the Southwest or all over?
Yeah,
the
all around the
place?
Southwest. We went from New Mexico to Missouri. I lived in Missouri for 1 month, and then we moved to El
Whoa.
Paso. Yeah, like my parents bought a house, then had to sell the house in a month because my dad got moved out of there. We moved to El Paso, then Colorado Springs, Dallas, San Antonio, Germany was their next move. I moved with them to Germany, and then I came back to the States and did school.
How old were you and how long were you in Germany?
I was
for that part?
18 in Germany, and I couldn't wait to get out of Europe, which is so foolish now, but I had 18-year-old mentality and just wanted to be with my friends in
Yeah.
Texas that I don't talk to anymore.
You're like, nobody here is rooting for college football. And,
Yeah,
and they
idiot.
don't sell Bud Light in any of the beer
Yeah.
gardens.
Oh my gosh, my 18-year-old self liking Bud Light is not not a version of me that's ever existed.
No,
Yeah,
I'm glad for that.
Yeah, me too.
No shade on Bud Light.
They are the sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah. Shout out.
I saw the Clydesdales out front.
Yeah. They're really beautiful, hard to feed.
Yeah, your neighbors hate them.
Yeah, and they go, my neighbors hate them. I keep having to knock on their door and borrow more oats. It's just like,
It's cool that you found somebody who wrote them off as like therapy horses, though.
yes, that's why they have those little tiny vests on.
Yeah.
Just like hanging on their
Couldn't
backs.
get a large vest.
No.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because they only make the vests maximum size of animals that can fit on planes. So I just staple them to their backs.
At least you haven't tried to get them on a plane yet.
Yeah, well, that's coming.
Asshole move.
Yeah. So, okay, do you feel like moving around a bunch informed the comedian in you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because did you move at all, or were you always
No.
kind of?
Yeah.
We moved a lot, so when you move somewhere, you kind of have to figure out your pecking order. So it's kind of like, you are at the beginning, you're kind of sussing things out. And I think I just quickly realized that humor like diffused things and was also kind of a protective bubble. Like if I was silly and weird already, like it got laughs. And so laughs weren't directed at me. They were like produced by me.
It's like the jujitsu method. Like
Sure.
use the force that's coming at you to like turn it back on them.
Yeah. Like, oh, you won't make a spectacle of me.
I'm going to make
I'm the spectacle
yeah.
of me. Yeah.
Let me beat you to it. Here's my type 5 about all my flaws.
Yeah, you can't pants me if I pants myself.
Oh my God, we love you, and we were gonna just like ask you to hang out.
Nah, dude, I'm embarrassing now.
Look at my butt.
Yeah.
So, and do you feel like that happened? You have 2 siblings, right? Or
I technically have 3 siblings.
siblings,
But
okay.
the youngest is very, very young. Yeah, and they're half. Yeah.
Did they kind of become funny as well, or?
No, I think like parent-wise, my dad is funny. My mom recognizes funny things, but isn't like funny herself. I would say, like, says funny things accidentally.
Gotcha. She's not in on the joke.
No.
Yeah.
yeah. But my dad is very clever, more like punny funny and witty. But I think all 3 of my siblings definitely got that. Like, we'll have the occasional like annoying family thread where it's just like Coca-Cola puns or something, that my mom just sits out of.
Yeah. So that's maybe where you get your short form DNA from.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That stuff that kind of has to get ironed out sometimes.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 18, you moved back from Germany.
18, moved back from Germany. I go to the University of Texas, you know, like a lot of us kind of think that I'm going to go to the theater route, and then I remember being at the University of Texas for some sort of like high school conference or something, and I walked into the theater building there, and I was just kind of like looking through the lobby, and then a kid in the lobby, I swear, like stood up and went like 575,000, and then every other kid in the lobby finished that song, and I went to be a film major instead. And it's weird now thinking about that because it's so endearing and sweet. But I think, it's that same 18-year-old.
Except that they got the lyrics wrong. It's 525,000.
Yeah. Idiots. That's why I left.
Yeah. You were so incensed at the inaccuracy.
Yeah. It wasn't the vulnerability I suddenly felt of like people exposing themselves and me being like, dorks.
You dorks. You're too earnest and sweet. So film major, I actually didn't know that you were a film major.
Yeah.
Did you think ahead as like, I'm going to be a director with this, an actor, a writer?
I wanted to write.
Yeah.
I focused on writing and wrote a lot in college. And then even thought that would be what brought me here. And then I did Teach for America right out of college and followed like my college sweetheart to Houston. I taught. She went to med school. And that became, pretty untenable.
Explain, sorry to hear that, but
That's
very happy for you now.
Worked out ultimately.
I didn't mean to like barrel over you saying a sad thing. For our listeners in other countries or even America, explain Teach for America. Yeah,
Teach for America. And in fact, I know at least Jake Jabor and other people in the improv community have done it as well. It is a program that takes most often college graduates, but other people can apply for it as well, and puts them in schools that are being affected by the achievement gap. Oftentimes this is like low-income schools in urban or rural areas.
So all,
yeah, sure.
Everything but suburban, yeah.
It was, very funny of like it started in 3 places and, now it's all over, the U.S. And the goal is just to kind of get like young, positive, good energy into schools, and it's a 2-year commitment, and it helps pay back for student loans or for other future school opportunities, like if you want to go to grad school, that kind of thing. But you are dropped into kind of the shit right away, like kids that really need help, schools that are very behind.
Did you have like your moment the first week where you had to like stand on a desk and rap or like write your name on the wall and graffiti?
Introduce the kids to poetry of Tupac Shakur. No, I didn't. I think my first year was just survival. It was so incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And I've worked with kids all my life. I love kids.
And by the way, just to clarify for listeners, I'm making fun of the movies that do that as a trope. I'm not suggesting that that's how it works. I feel like there was a wave of movies in like the early 2000s or late 90s that were like 3 or 4 in a row that were that.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're all like ex-Navy SEALs that come in.
Yeah.
And they become the teacher with the heart of gold.
Yes, right. Yeah. Sorry, so continue. Yeah.
That's okay. So it was incredibly hard because the environments where I worked with kids were always summer camps. And when you're teaching, there's actually stakes, you know, and the if you're at a summer camp and a kid acts up or something like that, you're like, all right, well, you're not going to canoe today. But when you're at a school, you're like, well, I'm not going to teach you math.
You're not going to learn percentages, and then you just won't know about them.
Yeah, you just won't have them.
Yeah.
So that was 2 years, but the whole time I was doing that, I just I had to go either to Chicago or to LA or to New York to pursue film, to pursue writing, to pursue acting. And that college girlfriend, she kind of did me a service by breaking up with me and being like, you got to go. Like, you can't stay here in Houston and wait for me to finish med school. And I'm not going to come to LA. So let's break up and you go follow your dreams. And she gave me some great advice, which was like, why don't you take some short form stuff at Comedy Sportz here in Houston. And I did that, and that was the end. You know, like that first Comedy Sportz class was like, oh, this is what I
can
been
make
doing
dad jokes for a living.
Well, we're 20
for
plus years into that experience.
$12 a show. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool. So right away you were like, oh, this is the missing piece to my.
It was.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like, probably similar to you, similar to a lot of people that have sat in this chair. It's like we've been improvising all of our lives, right? Like at those summer camps, I'm like making skits up on the fly, you know, to entertain the kids while we're waiting, you know, for the archery range to open up or whatever. Like, you're just constantly being spontaneous and entertaining and doing that sort of thing. And like a lot of people too, like Whose Line was like such a big part of my life, the British one, you know.
Yeah, same.
I remember in moving, because we moved so much, like we would end up in hotels for like a chunk of time while my parents looked for houses, and that was the only time we ever had cable TV. So it was like putting MTV or Comedy Central into your vein for 1 month.
Yeah.
You know, just downloading as much of that content as you could, and that was like discovering Whose Line was like discovering Mr. Bean as a kid. It's just like, this has been around, and people aren't talking about this all the time.
I feel like you and I are a similar age.
Yeah.
Like that era of Comedy Central, when it was kind of like brand new, they were, it was like wall to wall Whose Line, wall to wall Kids in the Hall, like old SNL reruns.
Yeah.
They like didn't have much new content. So it was like that, and then stand up shows.
Yeah.
But the like short attention span theater and stuff, or like stand up. So it was like little clips. But you could really mainline if you binged for a week. You're watching like 30 episodes of Whose Line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And great Saturday Night Live, because, you know, they had old stuff, they had new stuff, they had stuff that had aired like the year before. So it was just exposure to just people that are still like my comedy heroes and icons, you know.
Yeah, Randy Quaid.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Randy Quaid.
I that's fresh in my mind because I just watched the SNL doc, and there's like one episode about the terrible year with like Randy Quaid and okay, so when did you start being like, all right, improv is...
So still on this track, like Comedy Sportz was done. Like I finished Comedy Sport, and then the idea was like, oh, should I stay? My Teach for America contract had ended. I was like, oh, maybe I'll stay another year and keep teaching. But then I said, no, I'm going to spend the summer, and I'm going to go to Chicago and do a Second City intensive, because that was all I'd known of was Second City at that point. But I had known of Second City for years, because if you're a comedy dork, you just know that that's where everyone came from. Yeah. You know? And so I went online, tried to sign up for a Chicago intensive for the summer, and it was sold out. And so I signed up for the LA intensive instead, like a 2-week come, study all day. And same deal, came to LA for 2 weeks and did the same in New York. Like, and then I'll go to New York for for a month, and I'll work there on a TV show. I was a production assistant and check out comedy places there. And when I came out here and just did my week here at the Second City Training Center in Hollywood, it was kind of like the Comedy Sportz. It was just like, oh, okay, I'm going to move to LA. And I remember specifically, it was Dave Rosowski's class. He did a week-long workshop, but he also hosted drop-ins on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And he told the workshop class, oh, you can come to this drop-in. And I was like, all right, I'll spend the extra money for 2 extra hours of instruction. And this is actually like not silly beginner workshop stuff. This is a drop-in, like legit exercises. And so I stood outside waiting for that drop-in to start, and I saw all these people start to arrive who were slightly older. It's like a freshman watching seniors come in, you know, and you're like, oh God, I bet these guys are really good.
They're all huge.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and they're talking about like, oh, I did background this week on like Grey's Anatomy. Like, oh, they're working actors. Or like, I almost shot a commercial. Like, they're almost shot a commercial.
I have an appointment to get headshots.
Yeah, that's it.
In like 6 months.
Oh, man. Like the ones in pizza parlors.
They might be hanging in my dry cleaners this year.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm going to look for them.
Yeah.
That'd be funny to pick out a dry cleaners based on whose headshots were up in there.
I go to dry cleaners that John Ritter went to in the 80s. No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Randy Quaid. I go to Randy Quaid's. Everything comes with stains. And funnily enough, in that drop-in class, that's the first time I ever met James Mastriani.
Wow.
And we did some scenes together. And then afterwards, the Second City at this point was located next to the improv on Melrose. And so everybody would go over to the improv after, you know, while waiting for a show. And I went over and like had a beer with James, and he was like, "Oh, you're really funny, man. You should move out here." And I did.
Wow.
I did, and I became like attached myself to him till now. You know,
Permanent barnacle.
Yeah, he's like my improv spouse.
That is so cool. When there's been a lot of stories like that on this podcast of like lifelong collaborations that begin just with a chance moment like that, like someone just being dropped into a class together or whatever. Yeah, it's cool.
And so I hadn't even moved here yet, but that was the decision. I went back to Houston, packed everything up, moved here in that fall, and went immediately into classes. And I just did that grind for a year and a half.
In the classes at Second City.
Classes at Second City. I was interning at Second City. I was there. You know, I would have been there 9 nights a week if that was possible calendar-wise. Because I just wanted to be around it.
And then, so for the listeners, the Second City Hollywood, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was no like, unlike the Second City in like Chicago and Toronto, there was no like main stage cast and show, right?
No, it was a disaster. It was a disaster. And I think like, you know, it's that institution is gone from LA now, so it's not like taking shots at like a standing place. And the people there were great. Right.
The teachers were all incredible, and people who had done those stages and stuff, and people who had like directed and been in the improv world forever. But like, unlike the other places where like they're selling tickets to like their satirical review of the year and people are coming in droves to see it, this was more like an educational institution.
100%.
And then there were shows there, but it was like graduates of the program or teachers putting together a show, but it wasn't like the public knows about this new review and newspapers come to review it and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Good training, good teachers. It's all that. But I think ultimately, what was the failure point for a few theaters out here is like they just didn't have the institution. That the institution was somewhere else, and this was an offshoot. I think that was the thing with iOS too. So it took me a long time to realize like, oh, the Second City Training Center is a training center. That's like as high as they aspire to be. Maybe like, not the people that work there, but Chicago doesn't. Maybe they tried it and it was a failed experiment. That's what you always heard is like theater doesn't work in LA. It's a film and television town. And the revelation that iOS was a bar. It was a bar with a stage attached to it, but like liquor kept that place afloat, you know, and the community, but not the care from the people back home.
Although I wonder two things about that IO space here. Is it one, if it was in a different location, because it was along Hollywood Boulevard, which sounds to people listening like, oh, well, that's like hustle and bustle, but it's like the crowd that walks around there is not an improv crowd.
No.
And you know, I wonder if it had been in like Silver Lake or something more neighborhoody with like locals coming and bringing their friend parking, right? Like cute bars and restaurants to go to rather than like, you know, like a weird like hot dog stand and people yelling at you.
A nightclub that's constantly changing.
Yes.
I always chaos too. There was like a recording studio downstairs.
Yeah. So, or we were talking about IO. Or
yes.
You were talking about, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I wonder also if the space had been more friendly to improv or performance in general. Like that space was so awful to play in. The vacuous ceilings and
Yeah, and that may have been Second City Hollywood's ultimate issue too. It was also on Hollywood Boulevard.
Right.
You know, like crammed between like a lingerie store and a, you know.
A souvenir stand.
Yeah. No parking, hard to get there, only stairs to get up there. So it's not like accessible for some people.
Right.
But yeah, again, not to knock those institutions, but it
Not
was
at
like,
all. Yeah.
because I received top shelf training, and the shows I got to see were wonderful, and the opportunities I got from those spaces were great.
Yeah.
But it was always curious, like, what is this place like where there's so much care at the top and it's really cultivated top down.
You did the Second City cruise for a while,
I did.
right?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So at Second City, I was there for like a year and a half grinding out, and I would see shows at IO and I would see shows at UCB, but I was putting all my attention there. And right around that time, this really cool opportunity came up where Second City had partnered with Norwegian Cruise Lines to do shows on the boats. And they cast it, all over the U.S., but in Chicago, this funny thing was happening where people were waiting to get on the main stage in Chicago, and they did not want to lose their spot, like in the queue, or they were waiting for Torco or whatever it was. So I think the casting people came out to L.A. quite a bit to find talent for these boats. And I had gone... Okay, so the first thing I did is... a really silly thing that I did is in January, I flew to Chicago my first year in LA, and I'd gotten enough improv reps that I was like, I'm good. I'm not like I'm done. No, not I'm done, but like I felt good enough. I felt like good amongst my peers. Those people that were seniors that I was so intimidated by, I was like, oh, like
you were giving them swirlies in the toilet now.
Oh, well, I was swirly myself.
Right.
We would all laugh about
it. Yep.
And then I would tag them out and do a better move. But no, I wasn't as intimidated because I had leveled up, and I think also just simple things like being honest and like listening like allowed me to kind of lap people that were maybe going for a joke or not being their authentic self or that kind of thing. So I saw Chicago was having Torco auditions, and so I flew to Chicago from LA in the dead of winter, and I auditioned for their tour company, which is just a very silly thing to do because there's a long queue of people, and they're not going to take some kid from LA who doesn't even live in Chicago. And I remember I went and auditioned. I was very nervous, and there were great people in the room auditing this, and they like give a word, and my scene partner, I think they said fishing, and I like cast a fishing line, and my scene partner, this person I'd never met before, he had the first line. He said, "Woogie, I love you," and he bit my shoulder. And this is like, I've spent money on a flight. It's so cold. Bit me on the shoulder. I think I felt great about my response. I like took it in, and I was like, Jeff, you've been so off since the divorce, and like grounded it.
Relationship, justification.
Sure.
We have a context now.
Yeah. But we never dug out of the shoulder bite.
No, of course not.
And very kindly, the auditors, when the set was over, they were like, "Hey, Mike, why don't you do another one with, Jessica or whatever," and had us do another scene, and that was cool. And I went down.
They knew you got screwed.
They knew I got screwed. Yeah. And I went down to the coffee shop afterwards, and there were some people from that audition in the coffee shop, including the guy who bit me. And he was like, "Wasn't that fun, man?" He's like, "I do stand up, so like this is like just something silly for me to do." Just like the lowest of stakes for him, highest of stakes for me.
Yeah.
But I got on their radar, and a few months later they had auditions in Las Vegas, and 12 of us, including James, we all got carpooled to Vegas. We stayed in 2 rooms, and we all auditioned for Vegas.
In 2 rooms, so like 6 people in one room. On
Yeah.
what? Like on floors? And...
Oh yeah, I was on the floor. I've been a improv floor sleeper for a long time. Like I'm the guy who's like, "Hey, you got a hotel for the festival? You got a spot on that floor? I'll pay some money."
Right. I'll sleep under the air conditioner.
How much money you need? That's fair for an air conditioner spot.
That room got a bathtub I can put a blanket in.
Yeah. Like, oh, sorry, man. Somebody's already in the bathtub.
Yeah, I'll sleep on top of them. More cushion for me.
Oh, sorry, man. Somebody's already sleeping on top of them.
I'll sleep under him.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We'll sandwich it. And 12 of us auditioned, and 11 got called back.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the 12th person got loaded in Vegas. Like, what a bad place to be sat in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was another thing. I got on the radar. I got cast to be an understudy in Las Vegas.
At Second City, Las Vegas.
Second City, Las Vegas.
Which was a place that, has a show.
Yeah, and they had a show on the Strip, a very funny show. We got to see it. But the understudy gig was you live in L.A., If they need an understudy, they call you. You get your ass to Vegas, and you get $50 for that show.
Oh, geez. You have to get yourself to Vegas.
Yeah. Or you move to Vegas,
and
you get a job, and then occasionally you get to understudy for $50.
Okay. Yeah.
So I declined on that.
Yeah, that's a bad deal.
And it turned into a good deal because about 5 months later, out of the blue, I got a phone call saying like, "Hey, you want to come do this boat?"
Amazing.
And it was amazing because it was one of the last European boats.
Oh, cool.
So I was
So you got to say "fuck you" to Germany and be like, "I can't wait to get back to this."
Yeah, I know. I did. I got to go back to Germany on my own terms, which was really cool. My family wasn't stationed there anymore, but like I got to go there and like.
Did you name drop? Were you like, my dad built something at one of your
the U.S. military bases that are slowly getting shut down around here that have been around since y'all were assholes?
My dad put a brick in them.
Yeah, my dad, he put a Burger King on there.
Yeah.
But it was out of Dover, England, and it was the Baltic tour. I got to go to like Russia and Iceland and all over, and the tour was with, or my cast included people who were from Chicago who like wrote reviews there. Martin Garcia and Holly Walker from Boom and this woman Maria Carell. So I just had this loaded, amazing cast, and I was so new to it all.
Right.
And I spent 9 months on a boat.
So let's pause here. I want some bullet point things, takeaways, because you were someone kind of green coming into this professional thing. That's like shows every night of the week, right? And with all these like hard-hitting vets, what are some things that you remember that were like big things that you learned or took away, performance-wise, improv-wise, professional-wise? Like, what were they?
Yeah, I think being on the younger end of the spectrum, like some of it was, I've always been, I think, fairly professional, in terms of showing up on time and being polite, listening instead of talking. But I just remember Martin Garcia kind of took me under his wing then, and I kind of lovingly called him, my second mom on the boat. And I think it was even just stuff like, you need a haircut, or just, or like, clean your shirt, iron your shirt, just like simple things to like look the part. I think that's
dress for the job you have.
Dress for the job you have, we'd be in some place like Copenhagen. I was like 25 years old, and I'm like, I'm not getting that fountain. He'd be like, don't get in the fountain.
Yeah,
like, you're a representative of of this company and also this boat. Like,
anything improv wise that stands out? Or those were mostly sketches, right?
Those were mostly sketches. Set? Yeah, those were mostly sketches. So I think here's one thing that the boat kind of taught me a little bit, which is like when it comes to the improv sets, it's like you don't always have to reinvent the wheel show to show. And I say this was unique for boats, but it's kind of like I would say in improv sometimes like you do a move and you're like, okay, I've done that. I don't want to ever do that again. Like, I've done a scene where we improvise how small a crew cabin or how small a cabin is on a ship. We're all jammed in here. And you do that scene or whatever, and the passengers would all laugh. And then next week you get an entire new group of passengers. Yeah. And it was like, I could come up with something entirely new, or I could feed them this very like, play the hits.
Yeah, play the hits. Use
find
your
a new
stock.
way to play it.
Yeah, that was a huge thing at Boom too.
Yeah.
And these sort of like stereotypical like the shorthand that you learn of like, oh, in the Netherlands the joke is that Belgians are stupid even though they're not.
Yeah.
It's like the same way like we used to have like Canadian jokes and stuff. It's like
sure.
So like you learn those kind of tent poles that you can erect anywhere in a show and work around.
Yeah, what's gonna like, where are their laughing points?
Yeah, where can you just insert a punchline that's like ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And just quickly from the sketch side, what I did learn that was so helpful is like you're doing the same sketches week after week for multiple months. You're really learning the timing of a joke, or you're learning, you're finding new ways to say it or to do it in front of a house where you're like, this is the pace,
Do you feel like that tuned your dials in a way that now you are, that process doesn't take as long, where like your internal sense of timing has been finely tuned and you kind of know?
Maybe a little bit. I think more than anything, it's made me like realize like to take a break from working on something, or like if I'm working on an audition or something, and then the next day to look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, and be like, oh, I can change the pace of this, or like I get it a little better now, having slept on it or having done it a few times and walked away from it.
Yeah.
Is how maybe I'd answer that.
Yeah, that's great advice for anyone too. It's like, the fresh eyes thing.
Yeah.
I want to zoom ahead because I want to get to like
your
improv theory and your because you're a great teacher.
Yeah, thank you.
And a great performer. But I want to hear like your thoughts about it. So zooming ahead, you come back, you do IO and UCB.
Come back, IO. I'm just following Mastriani now. Like I've always been. I feel like, or I was always like about 6 months behind him. So it's like, come here. He's going through IO. I'm going through IO. You know, he and I were also part of this group that was doing a long cage match run that we both got kicked out of. So it just made us cling to each other a little bit more.
Yeah. Was that Orpheus Roy?
No, that was Freedom Snatch.
Oh,
the Pink Tie Boys.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when he and I came back, we'd both been kind of asked to leave this team that we had helped found, and so I think we found comfort in each other, and we formed Orpheus Roy, which became a long-running cage match team. And it was James who was doing UCB, and then I was doing UCB, kind of chasing him, and along the way we were collecting friends from boot camp.
Yeah.
And I would say ultimately it was boot camp, to toot your horn a little bit.
Toot it. Toot my horn.
But Susie and Jim Woods, it was basically the two of you from the jump, right?
Yeah, for like the first 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, I was doing drop-ins for my first 2 years out here. Every Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, any chance I could, I was paying $20 extra for improv reps. And then you and Jim kind of created this program where you could do it 5 days a week for 2 hours with the same group of hungry young performers.
Yeah.
And boot camp. I think it changed the game for a lot of us, but it also just gave so many of us friends.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it really became its own little like society.
Yeah, yeah.
And also because there was no hierarchy or pecking order, because there was it wasn't a school, and it wasn't it didn't have like teams to get on or auditions. It was just like a club.
Yeah.
It was extracurricular from IO and UCB. And
yeah,
places.
that was it.
So yeah, it's like, do you want to meet up like as if we're going to the gym together and just get improv reps for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week? Yeah.
And for me personally, I don't think I could have had two better mentors to kind of follow because of what y'all were teaching and also your own backgrounds. Like there was no knocking short form from you and Jim, because you both came up doing short form and had appreciated it and knew the value of it.
If anything, we used like the things that we got from that, or the nuggets we could pull and apply to long form, especially group games and stuff like that. Where it's like, we kind of knew how to use that tool on long form.
Yeah, it's like you're not going to do a bunch of long form pun jokes. Like that doesn't apply itself, but making a choice right away.
Yes.
Or stepping into a character right away, or like leading with emotion, any one of those short formy things.
Right.
Helps so much, and y'all valued that. And then I think also as I was transitioning to UCB, a lot of people get stuck in like game, logic, brain part of it. And I felt like you and Jim were not UCB quote unquote people. You were great improvisers who got to UCB and knew how to use all your foundational skills to play game. And when I saw how that could be applied, it was like,
how can that be applied? How would you describe that?
I think what it was in my first 2 years, I was on the Second City Rosowski diet, which is just like relationship. Here's what it is. Like my first 2-3 years out here, my mantra, like in my head before a show, was be honest, everything matters, take care of your partner. And that was like kind of drummed into me. That's what I really took from the Second City improv experience, was like, if I can do those 3 things in a set and keep that in the back of my head, I can make those things work. So it was applying those to game and just making sure that I was still like finding a relationship in there and not just like standing and trying to like say the clever thing or heighten something or hit a pattern. It was still finding the stakes and what mattered, and like being a fucking human underneath it all, who had like hopes and wishes and desires and cared about the other person, and it wasn't just a game for game's sake.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you're the thing like tying you to the scene is your scene partner and your characters' relationships, rather than the audience.
Yeah.
Like you're not tying yourself to the laughs, you're tying yourself to what's going on and what matters to this person. Yeah.
And I think too, and I love when Eugene was on this podcast, how much Eugene kind of talked about performance.
Yeah.
And I think like those early days taught me how to be a performer.
Yeah.
You know, and how to make eye contact with your scene partner and
Right.
how important that is. That everything matters thing was just like so huge because it was like, it's not what's being said. It's like what you hear and what you're picking up from the other person.
I talk about when I teach like 3-dimensional listening, which to me, like, what I mean is you're not just hearing and listening to the words, you're listening to how they're said. You're picking up all these micro like facial expressions and the body language of the person, their energy and intensity, their volume, whether they're walking towards you or away from you, the pace, like all of that stuff. And if you can like tune your spidey sense into all of that, put like antennas on every like fiber of your body, you'll pick up so much more than just hearing someone say the words, "I'm going to the dry cleaners." You know? It's because it matters. All of that is, and the audience sees it and feels it. So to use it as part of your meal is important. So finishing this thought of like, so then the difference between how other people were applying game at UCB and how Jim and I taught you or showed you, like what is that then?
Sorry, what?
I feel like you were on your way to answering that question, and you said like this. Here's the difference. The second city thing was like that mantra.
Oh yeah.
And then.
Okay. Well, then I think on the other side of it is like, I guess what I appreciate so much about folding in the game and that sort of thing too is like, is the value of pattern, the value of like now knowing everything here. How do you like comedically turn this into what feels like a sketch or a written performance instead of just like wandering in the dark.
Right.
And that would be my frustration sometimes at other theaters is like, because there wasn't a firm vocabulary or idea or game plan of like how we're going to play together, it was wandering in the dark.
Do you feel like your writing background helped with that because you could have sort of an observer that on your shoulder that's like, ooh, okay, so the thing here is this is a husband and wife that can only agree when they're playing a game. So now that's like the thing to patternize or explore, or I don't know. But
no, that's a good question. I think my writer brain helps. I think that like serves me really well in what I like to do in an ensemble setting. And what I really like to do, I guess how the writer thing applies, especially towards the end of a show, is I'm thinking like, how does this wrap up? What is it? What mattered at the beginning that can still be played here? That isn't just like a random connection, but like, are we going to like? What if this whole thing, took place? What if all of this was like a fever dream of somebody, and how can we make that pay off to where it's not like a cheesy that was a dream, but like we earned it.
It's not a cop out or a device. It's like a build that's really satisfying, and
yeah, that's it. We had a How I Met Your Sitcom show like. Last year that just like felt like a magic trick at the end because everything came together enough where you're like, like it's linked a certain way. And so I like big picture wise sitting there and looking at that. And I remember once being on my IO Herald team, somebody coming on the back line during a very messy show and just being like, fix this, like whispering into my ear, because like that was it. It was like me kind of going on, like finding a way to justify or ground things or like put it somewhere where everything like eased out. And I think that is the writer. Yeah, for sure. Being like, this scene doesn't work because it doesn't have a context. So let me just walk on, paint a context on it, walk off, and give them some grounding.
I will say this about you as a player too, and as a person, but you're never checked out. Like you are as active in your listening from the back line as you are when you're playing a scene.
Oh, thank you.
And you can see it. It's like you're in it. It's electric. You're ready to like jump in with it. Your tag response is so quick. Like your reflex of that, and you're just like shooting out and doing it and being very clean and abrupt about it.
Yeah.
So it's like you're always ready to catapult in if you're needed, but you're ready to like stick to the back wall if you're not. But it's like it's sort of like it's almost like a superhero who's like already in his costume, just waiting for the crime to happen.
Yeah.
It's like I don't need to go to that phone booth. No, my glasses are off. We all know who I am. Just commit a crime. I dare you.
Clark has not been at the paper in a while.
Yeah. Nobody knows all the crime that's happening in the city because the paper is defunct now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that very active listening too that serves you in those wrap up things, and I feel like your brain is always on this project of like noticing connections or flagging things that are important. Do you feel like you play in a way where you have a ton of ideas for tags that you don't use because you're like waiting for kind of the right moment when it's needed, or is it not that conscious?
I think I'm trying to play in a moment where I'm being very present, where a tag might come in and it comes in and it's like that. Gotta flush that one now. It doesn't work. Like what does, or like hold on to it, as like a second option or a third option, but just trying to ultimately like stay as present as possible. And there are funny times, like especially with Outside Dog.
That was your UCB Herald team.
Yeah, my longstanding UCB Herald team and house team. Is like I remember there were many times in a show where I'm like, I'm not gonna make this tag move, and then Matt Newell would make it immediately after, and it was kind of like rats.
Yeah,
good for him.
I have that too, and I have that ego part of me that's like, but I was being the bigger person and letting them breathe. Yeah. And now you get credit for my joke that I also thought of. Yeah.
And it's so lame in the green room afterwards to be like, I almost did that too.
Yeah, I know. It's like, why can't I help myself?
I almost.
But I used, for a while, I coached Outside Dog, and I also coached Bangarang and JV. I had all of you guys kind of in succession. Yeah. And I remember with all of you guys, a big note that I would give is like, play your show so that you have like 5 moves that you didn't make that you can talk about at Birds after.
I still use that line.
Do you?
The talk about at Birds line. Yeah, I always credit
Birds
that to
is the
you.
bar next to UCB that people would go. Yeah.
But I think that's great advice, is like, and that's for you out there, is you can talk about it afterwards, and it's still almost as like freeing and good, and maybe even better because it didn't like gum up a show because you didn't get to do your clever thing. And I think anybody who's tag happy, part of that is like sitting on 3 tags before you do the 4th, because you got to let shit breathe.
Yeah, you got to let it breathe. You can't assume that this is where the scene is necessarily going or wants to go. Like let them find what they're building before it's solidified, and also for the rhythm of the show. Yeah. So that it's not just like as soon as we're onto something we're leaving it, especially in a Herald. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about. So you've been posting online like your drop-in classes for Ouijas, and you title them. They all have great titles. I want to take some of them, truly.
Oh, yeah.
One that popped up recently was called McRib Scenes. Please tell me about this.
Okay, great. McRib Scenes is one of my favorite things to do. So I found this, I created this emotion chart, but mostly I just cribbed it from Googling emotion chart. But it's like the five major emotions. So kind of think in that movie Inside Out. It's like happy, sad, anger, fear, ashamed, like are kind of the core emotions there. And then underneath those 5 ones are about 30 versions of those. So kind of in order from like small to high. So like for happy, it might be like
pleased,
glowing. Yeah,
okay.
Pleased is a low end one,
right?
And then a high end one is fired up, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably on this chart. There's probably 50 emotions. And what I do is students pick one of those. I pull one out into the hallway, and we pick one of those emotions, and we kind of talk about what's the difference between enraged and outraged. You know, like so we just like briefly.
What is the difference?
I usually put it on them first. So I go like, you tell me what you think the difference is, so that way I'm not like incepting it into them.
Can I try?
Yeah,
like
sure.
We'll pretend I'm a student. So my instinct is that enraged is like you're so like absolutely inflamed about something, but there's like nothing you can do about it. And outraged is like it's that person's fault, like they cut me off in traffic and caused me to like roll down that hill. I'm outraged at them.
Great.
And there's like someone I can like yell at or blame, but enraged is just like, I can't believe what our government is doing. You know.
And probably what I do is, if you did that, I'd be like, great, sounds like you know it. You know, because I'm learning from them. Like oftentimes I'll ask just to be like, what
do you
like?
think?
Yeah, it's a lot of that. It's leading. And then if like they have trouble, then I'd probably like would do exactly what you did, is just start with in and out, and kind of be like, in feels like it's still boiling, or it's at a point here, right? And out does feel like it is someone else. Like you're rarely enraged maybe at someone else, but you're outraged at others. You're rarely like outraged at yourself, but you're enraged maybe at a mistake you made.
Sure. Yeah.
So we talk about it, they pick it, and then we go back in. Another student is already on stage. They will always be work at a cash register at a McDonald's. And then the person walking in with that emotion, they walk up and they have to decide that the McRib is either back on the menu at McDonald's or now off the menu at McDonald's, and then they have to play that emotion, right? So that's it. Like all the scenes are stranger scenes. All the scenes are transaction scenes. And the game is just like playing a very big emotion or small emotion at a place with like very low stakes and like finding that, you know.
Can we try
Absolutely.
one based on
Yeah.
that? So is it, would you rather I choose enraged or outraged?
Gosh, I wish I had my list here
okay.
show. Yeah, to let you pick one. Pick either. Pick either, because it doesn't matter. Like you can, when you run this exercise, make it important for one person to label the other. But,
right. Or do you want me to just secretly pick an emotion that we didn't talk about and come in and do it? Or is it better if I do one of the ones?
I wish I had my coaching back here. I could show it. I could give you a list of emotions.
It's got a canteen, a pocket knife, a map, your whole coaching backpack.
It's full of index cards. I do a lot of index card drills and a lot because I was a teacher, so I have a lot of like visual aids and stuff.
I'm the same.
Okay, so I'll work the counter.
Yeah, but do you want me to use either enraged or outraged, or do you want me to choose one that we didn't talk about?
Choose one that we didn't talk about.
Okay.
That's fine. But the stimulus ultimately is like, and you've got to let me know if it's on or off the menu. That's an important thing.
Okay.
Because I don't know. I'm just a sales clerk. All
okay.
Right. Hi, welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order?
Yeah. Sorry. Is there a reason the McRib is suddenly back on the menu?
Yeah, it's seasonal. So we got it back on the menu now. It's going to be here for about 6 months. Can I get one of those started for you?
Yeah, but you want my personal information or something, right? This is a sort of my patterns of ordering, and so you're trying to get me to spend more money. Is that it?
Yeah, you'd think so. It feels pretty special to you that we have this here, but you don't have to sign up for anything. It is not.
I don't, because you already probably are tracking me. Are you tracking me because of my credit card that I used last time on my iPhone? And now you know my movements around town. You know what I buy.
Look,
I know it's not your fault. I know it's corporate. Are you on camera so you can't talk about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Look, it's easier if you just order one now because we've already got you in our system and we have you down for 3.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you like this so that they can't read my lips.
Okay.
I'm going to order something else, okay? Something completely wild. And we're going to throw them off by scent.
Okay.
And then you're off the hook because I'm independently ordering it.
Sure.
And they don't know that we had this conversation because they can't read our lips.
Sure. I've been putting them in the large French fry boxes for people.
Oh. Okay, like a disguise.
Yeah, and then you surround.
Because, I do want the McRib.
Top, you stuff French fries on top.
Okay, yeah. Can I get a, do you sell French fries in like a barrel?
Yes.
Throw 6 McRibs in there.
You got it.
And also, can I get 6 Happy Meal toys, 2 chocolate vanilla swirl shakes, a piece of bacon.
We're offering the Shamrock Shake now.
Yeah, fuck.
I'll put it.
Put it inside the other shake.
Yeah, the bottom will be Shamrock Shake.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that there's like a simple, it's like the reason you are this emotion is because of this one thing, this same thing. It takes all the other legwork. It isolates the exercise so that you're not thinking of specifics.
Yeah.
You're just thinking of how to play this emotion.
And you're hopefully finding a justification, which is like, were you suspicious?
I was.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and so it's finding like you can't just be suspicious for suspicious sake. So it's like, oh, if it's back, it's because I like kind of the narcissism. Like, it's like you're doing this to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much my dad. It's like, well, there's got to be a reason there, and it's, they want my stuff so that they can. It's like, Dad, nobody cares that much about you and your stuff,
For sure.
I loved the moment where you like agreed with it, agreed with the reality. Was there Was that a conscious, like, this will give us more room to play?
Yeah, because when I'm teaching it too, it's like this person, you're going to start as the context. Like I'm trying to avoid, you're not starting as the voice of reason. You're just starting as the base reality. Like you got to help us ground this as a McDonald's or whatever. But once you realize what the thing is it going to be more fun for me to play into this suspicion or to be like, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy?
Right.
And it was like seeing that one path and the other. And I think that's the benefit of doing improv for as long as we have, is you've done so many scenes, you're like, this one might not end very well if I'm just like, nothing's going to happen to this McRib.
And at the very least, we're going to be recycling through the same beat over and over and over again. I'm going to be suspicious. You're going to be going, what can I tell you? It's just the way things are. I'm going to be suspicious. You're going to be, And so, it's like we can heighten the intensity of that, but it's just going to be that.
Yeah.
So to take the shift into like, you reveal that it is true.
Yeah, what's the surprise here?
Yeah, that's fun. That's a new thing we can play. And now we are also a team in the scene. Instead of me taking it out on you and you being, my hands are tied, now we're working together. And but I can still be suspicious.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, and I get to like lead into that or play into it. And, it's maybe like a more playable scene or more surprises and fun and different than just shutting down.
Right.
What I like also about McRib is just exposing people to like 40 different ways to play an emotion. Because words like betrayed is such a great
It's one of my
emotion.
favorite. I do a lot of emotion index card exercises, and that's one of my favorite ones. Yeah. Betrayed, offended.
Yes,
like
offended.
Personalizing something.
Heartbroken.
And it's, like you did this to me.
Yeah. And then I like to remind people, like, listen for those words in living rooms and monologues. And more importantly, say those words in living rooms and monologues.
Right.
Because, like, if you have the option to say, like, oh, I was really sad the other day because, like, Trader Joe's didn't have the barbecue sauce I like to get for my, like, hamburgers. That's the thing. But if you're like, I was heartbroken that Trader Joe's didn't have it. I can play that scene.
Yeah, that's a great note for people doing monologues in openings or as part of show. Yeah, and even you can be lighthearted and almost jokey about the way you say it in a monologue. So like using betrayed, like Trader Joe's didn't have the whatever, Trader Joe's didn't have the seasonal lemonade I wanted. It felt like such a betrayal.
Yeah.
Like I went there specifically. I drove an extra amount of time out of my way and then they didn't have it.
And when you're talking about like scanning for those where everything matters, what matters there more than anything is betrayal.
Yeah.
Like that is not a scene without betrayal.
Betrayal.
That is the like ignition for that scene.
You're right. And then the comedic take on that, the way that the initiator can use that, they can put a little top spin on it, where now we like, it's almost like a map over scene. Like Trader Joe's betrayed me, or whatever. Like if they want, it's there if they want it, because it is such a strong and loaded word. You made up this McRib act.
Yeah. The McRib is mine.
For part 2 of this episode, go to yesalso.supercast.com. If you like this podcast, you can support us and get a ton of bonus content over at yesalso.supercast.com. If you have a question about improv that you'd like us to answer on one of our future Q&A episodes, send it on over to yesalsopod@gmail.com. Remember to follow us on Instagram at yesalsopod. And keep sharing us with your improv communities. We love the love. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.